It's from Afghanistan. All of them is from this get scholarship from Denmark, yeah, from the NGO RWI. Also, they're from Niger, Bubu, yeah, from Niger is the scholarship from Indonesian government. Yeah, also, I think the back, the student also in the master in law. I forget the name. Yes, this is also the student from the master in law. It's from the specialization international law and human right. Yeah, and also in the Zoom meeting, there are some students from undergraduate. Yeah, for my class in international law. Yeah, they join in this event. Yeah, from the guest lecture. Okay, the topic is recognition. So this is in the Zoom. Yeah, many students in there from the international program. Yeah, yeah. Recognition is the very interesting topic. Yeah, because this is not purely law. Yeah, but influenced by political. Yeah, there's many things. So many experts in international law, they say that eliminate the recognition, yeah, because the maybe recognition may give more disadvantages than advantage, because some many cases abusing by the party that gave the recognition. Yeah, but now it's very relevant today, yeah, to discuss about the recognition concerning the Taliban, yeah, because most of you, yeah, from Afghanistan, so you know about you have the experience, yeah, direct experience, so you know about how come Taliban, yeah, the proceed of the Taliban become the government and they hold the government in there. You all of you have the experience about that, yeah. Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, without talking too much, yeah, for the more efficient, I will invite, yeah, the first is the dean, yeah, of the Dikala University, and after that, yeah, for our Mr. Saifullah. Okay, the time is yours.
Yes, thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum. Dear professor, academicians, and valued colleague, and beloved students. Today we, the Faculty of Law of Dicle University, Turkey, Diyarbakir, are honored and delighted to be here with you. Hosted by the Islamic University of Indonesia, the most important element that unites us coming from different geographies and cultures is undoubtedly law. Law is not only a set of rules, but also the guarantee of justice, you know, human dignity and social order, especially. In this respect, law is a universal language that builds bridges between nations, we think. This conference we are holding today will contribute not only to the sharing of academic knowledge, but also to the strengthening of mutual understanding, cooperations and friendship, I think. Especially in a global world, it's more important than ever for legal system to learn from each other and produce solution to common problems together. For us who have traveled from Diyarbakir to Yogyakarta, be here, this meeting is not only an academic visit, but also an opportunity for cultural interaction and gaining new horizons. On this occasion, we extend our sincerest thanks to our host university for its great hospitality. I hope that our conference will lead to fruitful discussions, new collaborations, and lasting friendships. And I thank everyone who contributed. I grade you all with respect. Thank you very much. And especially we thank to Safriani professor.
Thank you, Professor Mehmet.
Thank you very much.
Speech. Okay, next we invite our outstanding speaker. Yeah.
My colleague,
So,
Assistant Professor
Saifullah.
Dr. Saifullah Hasar.
Yeah, he has
As-
been international.
Yes,
He's with me.
yes.
Yes.
In Dicle University,
Same
Faculty
subject.
of Law.
Selamun Aleyküm ve Rahmetullahi ve Berekatuh. Welcome everybody. Yes, as Professor Mehmet and Sefriyan introduced, I am Saifullah Hasar, Assistant Professor of International Law in Dicle University, Diyarbakır, Turkey. I feel very lucky to be here in Indonesia, in Yogyakarta, and meeting with you, with students from different countries, especially Afghanistan, because of today's subject. And I'm very grateful to Professor Sefriani for inviting me to deliver this lecture in the first place. I hope it will be an interesting lecture for you. I assume you already got international law classes, right?
Yep.
And maybe this will be, so maybe you have some basic knowledge, right, on international law. It's good to have that.
International law and human rights.
And human rights. Today's topic, recognition of governments, is a subject of international law, but a subject that is influenced by politics so much. That's why it is a very difficult subject to understand. For example, maybe you already see in the news, the question of recognition sometimes arises, right? For example, a couple of years ago, in Venezuela, there was an opposition leader called Guaido, right? Some states recognized him as the president of Venezuela, while the rest of the world continued to recognize Maduro as president of Venezuela. So who was the president of Venezuela, right? Or more recently with Syria, right? Al-Assad was in power for many years, despite a civil war, an ongoing civil war. Then the opposition leader Al-Shara toppled him and came to power. So who was the president of Syria during this time, right?
I think this because the student in Zoom, they have your voice.
Okay. Or a case that is maybe closer to you, the Taliban, right? Taliban toppled the legitimate government of Afghanistan in 2021. And since then, since 2021, no other state in the world recognizes it as the government of Afghanistan. But it is in control of Afghanistan. So who is the government of Afghanistan? Can the Taliban be regarded as the government of Afghanistan despite not being recognized by other states? So the questions we are dealing with are these types of questions, and it is a very relevant question when we consider the recent cases that I mentioned. So maybe we should start by what does recognition mean, right? What does it mean when a state recognizes the government of another state? So recognition basically means acknowledgement of the status of an entity as government. Once an entity or a group is recognized as government by another state, that means the recognizing state will treat that entity as the government or as the representative, the legal representative of the state in question. So Russia, for example, Russia is the only country that recognized the Taliban, right? So Russia, for example, by recognizing the Taliban, accepted that Taliban can represent, can legally represent, can conclude treaties on behalf of Afghanistan, can send diplomats on behalf of Afghanistan, can speak in international organizations on behalf of Afghanistan. By recognizing the Taliban, Russia meant this. But it is still a complicated question, and you will see why. We should start by why do we need recognition, right? The question of recognition arises only in contested situations, only when there is an unconstitutional change of government, like a coup d'etat or a civil war. For example, why the question of recognition has arisen in the case of Afghanistan is because Taliban came to power through unconstitutional means, right, at the end of a civil war, by force. Or it arises when there is a coup d'etat. For example, in Myanmar, or also called Burma, right, junta, the military junta, came to power by toppling the democratically elected government. So it arises in such situations where the regime, where the government changes in an unconstitutional way. It doesn't arise in Indonesia, the government changes in accordance with the constitution, or in Turkey, in my home country, or in many other countries. So this question arises only when there is an unconstitutional change of government, like at the end of a civil war or as a result of a coup d'etat. As in the cases I mentioned, like Syria, Afghanistan, Myanmar, or Libya, if you remember, there was a civil war in 2011. Maybe you are too young to remember, but if you read about it, in such cases it arises. There are some other cases that doesn't attract much attention. But for example, in Africa, in many countries, so many coup d'etats happen. Like one of the complicated was Niger in 2023. So this is a very relevant question today. Based on these examples, we can say it is a very relevant question today. I will today try to, because as I said, it is influenced by politics, I will today try to explain what the law says, regarding how to identify the government of a state. Recognition is influenced by politics, but today I will try my best to explain what law says, what international law says, that how we identify the government of a state in such contested situations. Why it is important to identify the government of a state, right? Why is it important to ask whether the Taliban is the government of Afghanistan or not, or whether the Al-Shara is the president of Syria or not, or the military junta is the government of Myanmar or not? Why is this question important? It is important because the answer to this question is about who can speak for the state in international fora. Like who can conclude treaties on behalf of Afghanistan? Let's say, who can conclude a treaty on behalf of Afghanistan with Indonesia? Or who can send diplomatic representatives to Indonesia on behalf of Afghanistan? Can the Taliban do that? Because some actions can be done only by governments, by legal governments. Only governments can send legal representatives on behalf of their states. Only governments can conclude treaties on behalf of their states. Or only governments, for example, can consent foreign intervention in their territory. I mean, only governments can invite foreign forces, foreign countries to militarily intervene, for example, in a civil war. So it is a very important question in a civil war. Like, which party in the civil war can speak for the state and as such can invite, if necessary, a foreign country to intervene, in the civil war. For example, I mentioned the example of Venezuela. So when Guaido was recognized by some European states and the United States, he he considered inviting the US Army to intervene in Venezuela. Was he able to do that legally, just because of being recognized by the US and some other few countries? Could he invite foreign forces on behalf of Venezuela, for example? So it's a very important question. The wrong answer to this question can lead to an unlawful war. Or it is important when it comes to the question of immunity, right? For example, recently, the United States of America, the US Army, forcefully entered Venezuela and forcefully arrested his president. But maybe you already saw in your international clause that heads of state has immunity from jurisdiction from other states. So if Maduro was president, right, the law of immunity was violated. But if he wasn't president, the law of immunity wasn't violated. So the question of who was the president is very important for every aspect of law. Because the US argued that Maduro doesn't have immunity because I don't recognize him as president. But should we care about the views of individual states, or should we care about what the law says? That's why I said it is a very difficult question influenced by politics. So the countries like the US can simply say that because I don't recognize him as president, he doesn't have immunity. But I will try to explain you what the law says. Okay. So the law says the generally accepted criteria, the traditional criteria to identify the government of a state is what we call the criteria of effective control. So the law says that which group, whatever group has the ability to exercise effective control over the territory and population, that group qualifies as the government of the state. And it makes sense by definition, right? Government means the entity who is governing. So whoever is able to govern effectively, whoever is able to implement law effectively over the territory and population, that group is considered the government of a state under international law, under conventional, traditional international law. So you may say that for that reason, Maduro was the president of Venezuela because he was in control of Venezuela, and therefore his immunity was violated by the United States of America. But, or based on this rule, you can also say that Taliban is the government of Afghanistan because he is in control of territory and population of Afghanistan. But this conventional view, this conventional idea is being challenged today by other doctrines, like the doctrine of democratic legitimacy. So some scholars argue that because of the recent state practice, where in some cases democratically elected governments continue to be recognized despite being overthrown by their army, we can argue that now democratic legitimacy as a criterion replaced the criterion of effective control. We have cases like this, like in 1990s, we have in Haiti, a Latin American country, the elected president was overthrown by the army, but the president was able to flee the country. He was able to go exile in the United States of America. And other states, the international community, continued to recognize him despite being in exile, despite not being in control at all, despite living in the United States of America, continued to recognize him as the president of Haiti. The international community did not only recognize him as president because of his democratic legitimacy, but also intervened in Haiti militarily through the United Nations Security Council So the United Nations Security Council authorized a military intervention by the invitation of that deposed president who is living in the United States of America. So that president was able to speak for its state, for its country, for his country, as if he is the legitimate president, despite living in exile, despite not being in control. And through military intervention, upon the invitation of this president, the military junta was overthrown in Haiti, and the recognized president who was living in exile took office in Haiti. So we have other examples like this, like the example of Sierra Leone, an African country, or the Gambia. And as you may know, customary international law is another source of international law, right, in addition to treaties. And customary international law changes through state practice. So if there is a consistent and widespread state practice, if states behave consistently in the same way and in a widespread manner, like if the international community as a whole behaves in the same way, we can argue that a new rule of custom or customary international law emerged. So some scholars, based on these examples like Haiti, Sierra Leone, the Gambia, argued that now a new rule of international law has emerged or is emerging regarding democratic legitimacy. So they argued that basically democratic legitimacy has replaced or is replacing the effective control doctrine. Similar arguments are made also with respect to the criteria of human rights or constitutionality, like democratic legitimacy criteria. Some other arguments made for human rights. So some argued that it is not the effective control, but respect for human rights that makes an entity qualify a government. Or it is not effective control, but constitutionality that qualifies an entity as government. So therefore, to be a government, you need to be constitutional. So under this theory, Taliban wouldn't be the government of Afghanistan because it is unconstitutional, because it came to power in violation of the existing Afghan constitution. But which theory is right? Effective control, democratic legitimacy, human rights, or constitutionality? If you ask me, the legitimacy criteria like democracy, constitutionality, and human rights is not part of the positive law. We can't argue that the law changed through state practice. Why? Because we don't have consistent and widespread practice where democracy, human rights, or constitutionality is upheld. Because if you follow the news, coup d'etats happened very frequently in Africa. And in many cases, other states don't care who came to power through coup d'etat. So not in every case, states uphold democracy. Not in every case, states continue to recognize the democratic elected government. They just deal with whoever is in power, whoever is in control. So, and for the law to change, as I said, we need consistent and widespread practice. We don't have that. Because of lack of consistency and because of widespread practice, we can't argue that effective control doctrine has now been replaced. But we have cases that diverge from effective control, right? We have cases like Haiti, Sierra Leone, the Gambia, and other cases where human rights, democracy, or constitution is upheld. So how do you explain state practice? To me, we can explain it as simple as that what matters is international recognition. So what matters is recognition by the international community. So what is the most common what is common among these cases is international recognition. So in Haiti, the president in exile wasn't the president of Haiti because of his democratic legitimacy, but because for some reason he was recognized by the international community. So instead of saying that it is human rights, constitutionality, or democracy, to me, what is common among all cases is international recognition. Only international recognition can replace effective control doctrine. Because democracy, human rights, constitutionality hasn't been applied consistently. What is common among all those cases is that when there is an alternative government recognized by the international community, that alternative government qualifies as government. But that alternative government needs to be recognized by the international community, almost all states. That's the only criteria that can replace effective control, in my opinion. So when it comes to Taliban, right, is it the government of Afghanistan, based on the explanations I made? What do you think? Based on the law I tried to describe, is the Taliban should be regarded the government of Afghanistan? No. Why? Okay, you explain first.
So, first of all, thank you so
Yeah.
much for such a comprehensive explanation. And of course, I need to tell you completely related to my homeland condition, Afghanistan. And it's a great pleasure to meet you all in this occasion. And first of all, based on my perspective, I think. Thank you so much. Yeah. Based on my perspective and what you have already explained, Afghanistan, like the current government, I cannot call it government, de facto authorities that are currently governing or ruling inside Afghanistan, they cannot be called a government and they cannot be recognized as a legitimate government. Why? It's very clear, first of all, that they don't have been recognized by the international community.
Yes.
That's the first point that you have
Yes.
already indicated, right? Because they don't fulfill the characteristics of a legitimate government. They have not been selected by the people of Afghanistan, right? They have not came through a constitutional process, which you have already explained,
Yes.
right? This is also another point which is very important in my perspective. And additionally, they came by force.
Yes.
So it's like kind of how to say government, which is although despite of the fact that we had a constitutional law which was finalized in 2004, and then there was a kind of mother of law that governed until 2021 Afghanistan. I mean, from the whole perspective, from every aspect, that was the law that was implemented. But after they came into power, they abolished that. And then they said, we don't accept it anymore because this is kind of a product of Western countries, not Afghanistan. So based on my perspective and what you have already explained, I think that Afghanistan and then the current de facto authorities that governing ruling in Afghanistan, they cannot be recognized because, as I already explained, they don't fulfill the characteristics that you have already explained. They have not been recognized by international communities. They are not accepted by the even people of Afghanistan, and there is no any specific or legitimate way or method that they came through. I mean, they came into Afghanistan and started ruling there. So that's why
I understand.
Yeah.
You favor other theories. For you, effective control doctrine is not the right theory to apply.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because because currently, like as you have already indicated, Taliban is ruling Afghanistan since 2021.
Yes, but there is also no alternative government, right? Recognized by the international community.
It's true. Yeah, it's true.
Okay, let's ask others too.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. How do you think?
The first definition that you gave us.
Yes.
They have power.
Yeah.
They are ruling Afghanistan, and everything they are doing inside Afghanistan. And in the they have some problem in the international and globally, but according to the region, they have relationship with Russia and they are recognized by them. They have some relationship with China, Pakistan. Right now it's not good, but they have Iran, and Arabic country. They have relationship, and they're rolling inside Afghanistan, and they doing that they wanna inside Afghanistan, and they didn't take care that the other people think. Yes, maybe in the political way they have some problem, but that Afghan people suffering.
Yes.
This is the case.
Yes. What is important?
That's
is
important.
this,
Yes, it's important.
That is more important. You say,
So when we talk about Afghan people, so where is a democracy? Can we talk about democracy inside Afghanistan? No, the girl are banned from school, university. Women can't do work. So what does it mean? So they are ruling. They have force. They have power. So.
Okay. Does anyone else has response? Yes. Yeah, with the yellow headscarf. Yes.
Thank you for giving me the chance to to share my opinion.
You can tell your name.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm Mauluda Hassas from Afghanistan. From my point of view, as you mentioned a few points regarding the international recognition, I think the countries are recognizing them indirectly by accepting their ambassadors, their foreign ministers.
Yeah, by some conclude treaties with them.
Yeah, through the diplomatic ways and through the some tradings and business.
Yes.
So we can see, although it is not a legal requirements that they don't have any of them, but in politics we can say that many countries now are recognizing them indirectly.
Okay. So yeah, I will make comments even similar to you or your friends. I want to hear your thoughts first. You are making good points. I'm very surprised. That's good. Yeah. You can say.
Thank you for giving me the chance. My name is Najiba Farahman. As you mentioned some theories, based on one theory that you mentioned, the government should have effective control.
Yes.
Since the Taliban has effective control in Afghanistan, we can say it can be a government, but based on another theory that you mentioned, that the international law should be recognized, or they should have the authority to ratify the treaties or do some essential work. It cannot be a government. So I think we need to scrutinize more and think about the other aspects to recognize or to understand is it a government, can be government or not.
Yes. Okay. These are very good comments, and some of the things that I was about to say anyway. So is it the government? Yes, under the effective control theory, right? Under the traditional criteria, we should say it is the government of Afghanistan. But I said sometimes international community recognize an alternative government, like a democratic one or constitutional one, on the one who respects human rights. And in those cases, effective control is basically sidestepped. But we don't have an internationally recognized government, yes. The vice president, the previous vice president, claimed to be the interim president in the absence of the president, right? When the president fled the country. He could have been recognized by other states, but not the state recognized him, right? Despite having some constitutional legitimacy. So yes, still some scholars, some international law scholars may argue that Taliban is not the government for not having constitutionality or respect for human rights or democracy. But to me, just strictly speaking, based on law, it is the government of Afghanistan. And this doesn't mean that it has the political legitimacy, but strictly and legally speaking, it should be the government of Afghanistan. And why? And maybe some of you that have different opinions will reconsider their opinions. I don't know. I will just make my case, and let's see what happens. So, as your friend said, international recognition is important, and Taliban is not recognized, right, except one state. And to me, this approach is correct. If international recognition can make a government, lack of international recognition should unmake a government too, right? But is it really denied recognition? That's the question. Verbally, it is denied recognition. Many states made explicit statements that we don't recognize the Taliban and we will not recognize it unless it establishes an inclusive government, inclusive of other ethnic and political groups, and unless it respects human rights, especially women's rights. But if we go deeper, we can't be sure about lack of international recognition because, as another friend of you said, it is being engaged anyway. It is being treated as government. Other states treat Taliban as if it is the government of Afghanistan. Many states, despite not recognizing the Taliban, concludes treaties with the Taliban, like trade treaties. Taliban signed these treaties on behalf of the Afghan state. Despite not recognizing the Taliban, many states accept diplomats appointed by the Taliban, or many states accredit diplomats to the Taliban. Like many states sent diplomats to Afghanistan, accredited to the Taliban foreign ministry. And many states hold talks with the Taliban on behalf of Afghanistan. So when they hold with the Taliban, they hold talks in official level, and sometimes with the official titles of Taliban officials. Like when they hold with a Taliban member, they issue public statements saying that we are holding talks with the foreign minister of Afghanistan, or foreign minister of Afghanistan, or prime minister of Afghanistan. So states deny recognition to the Taliban, but legally or in practice, in fact, on the ground, they treat it as the government of Afghanistan. So to me, and I didn't tell this before, what is denied to the Taliban is political legitimacy here. As I said, recognition means recognizing the status, the legal status, an acknowledgement of the legal status. But that's the usual definition, that's the common definition. In practice, states sometimes use recognition for other purposes, like to give political legitimacy or to deny political legitimacy, to have diplomatic relations or to deny diplomatic relations. So, for example, a state can deny recognition even to a proper government to mean that I don't want to send diplomatic representatives to you, or I don't want to accept your diplomatic representatives. So recognition can be used in different meanings. And if we go deeper and if we take into consideration the engagement with the Taliban, we can say that in the case of the Taliban, recognition is used to deny political legitimacy, not legal status of the Taliban. For example, I am sure you know that some European states came together and announced an initiative to bring a case against the Taliban before the ICJ based on ZIDO, the Convention on Discrimination Against Women, right? Germany, Netherlands, and some other countries. Who are those countries suing, right? Who are they suing, do you think? Who they want to bring before the court? By Afghanistan, by suing Afghanistan, what they mean, right?
They talk about the government.
The Taliban, right? They want to sue the Taliban. But only states can appear before the ICJ, before the International Court of Justice. If you intend to bring a case against the Taliban, this means you already recognize it as the government of Afghanistan, because only Afghanistan can appear before the ICJ, and only the government of Afghanistan can represent Afghanistan before the ICJ. And these states was aware of this dilemma. They deny recognition, but they also want to bring a case against the Taliban. And in the same statement where they announced this initiative, the initiative to bring a case against Afghanistan, they also stated that this doesn't prejudice or denial of political recognition of the Taliban. They this time explicitly used the word political. They said, they wanted to say basically, we may be denying political recognition to the Taliban, and our action doesn't prejudice this, but we want to bring a case against the Taliban as if it was the government of Afghanistan. Yes, they never spell the word government. Sometimes they spell it, sometimes they call it de facto government. But it is all to deny political legitimacy. Strictly speaking, in legal terms, they actually, by their behavior, recognize the Taliban as the legal government of Afghanistan. There are some other indications, there are some other evidence indicating that the Taliban is regarded the government of Afghanistan under international law. For example, right after the Taliban took over Kabul, the ICC, the International Criminal Court, the prosecutor of the ICC, wanted to open the case against Afghanistan for war crimes committed during the civil war in Afghanistan. The ICC prosecutes only individuals, not states. So the ICC wanted to prosecute individuals who are responsible for war crimes during the civil war between the Taliban and the government. But ICC needed to communicate with the government of Afghanistan to reopen the case, to reopen the investigation. Why? Because of the complementarity principle in international criminal law. So International Criminal Court investigates a crime only if the crime itself is not investigated by the government of the state in question. So ICC needed to communicate with the Taliban, with the government of Afghanistan, to say that we are about to start investigations for these crimes. Please give us information if you have already started investigations for these crimes. So it needed to communicate this message with the government of Afghanistan. And after, I don't want to get into detail because of the limited time we have, but after a long judgment, a long decision, the ICC decided to communicate with the Taliban as if it was the government of Afghanistan. So sometimes you have to, accept it as the government, as in those cases. As another reason that you have to accept the Taliban as the government of Afghanistan is the area of state responsibility, right? I don't know if you know, have you ever heard International Law Commission? It is an organ of the United Nations who prepare draft treaties for states to adopt. It's up to states to adopt or not. So one of the draft articles, which is not adopted as a treaty but accepted as part of customary international law, is draft articles on state responsibility. And according to these articles, a general de facto government, the term used, the term used exactly is a general de facto government, is already an apparatus of the state. And the actions of a general de facto government can be attributable to the state. As if, and it is called government, as if the government, a general de facto government, not any other legitimate government, represent a state when it comes to state responsibility, when it comes to who should represent a state for violations of international law. those draft articles in the comments says that because we accept the rule like this because we should not exonerate, right, a de facto government from responsibility because of lacking, based on legitimacy criteria. Because if we apply legitimacy criteria in such situations, we will be exonerating a de facto government. So if we don't accept the Taliban as representing Afghanistan when it comes to state responsibility, we can't sue the Taliban. We can't bring a case against the Taliban, for example, before the ICJ. So one of the reasons the draft articles is drafted in this way is this. If we don't accept this, we will be exonerating, we will be rescuing from responsibility a de facto government if we apply legitimacy criteria. I don't know if you understand me. I'm just saying what the International Commission says. I'm just wanted to be sure you understand. Another reason why a de facto government, for example, should be accepted as a government, especially before international tribunals, international courts, is that when it is important to know who will be carrying out the obligations indicated in the decision of the court, right? Let's say Afghanistan is going to be sued before the ICJ. So at the end of the case, the ICJ will make a decision saying that, for example, the Afghan state should stop these and that violations under ZIDO, under the Convention on Discrimination Against Women. Or maybe Afghan state should pay compensation to this and that entity. So who can carry out these obligations in practice? Only an effective government. Only a government in power, only a government who is in control of the financial institutions of the country, or in control of the police, right? Or in control of the army, to carry out the obligations that will be indicated by the court at the end of the case. So from this, when we think from this aspect too, that we should accept de facto entities as government from this aspect too. And we have also evidence from case law. We have evidence also from case law, I think, because so that students from Zoom can hear me, I will speak from the microphone. The battery is dying. This one too. This is better. Yeah, the battery in this one is better. So we have evidence from case law too. So if you remember, one of the secondary sources of international law is case law, right? So we have evidence from the case law too. For example, there is an ongoing case against Myanmar, against Burma, based on the Genocide Convention. Myanmar is accused by the Gambia of committing genocide against Rohingya people. And in Myanmar, as I said earlier, there was a coup against the democratically elected government. And today, it is the military junta who is in power. So who do you think is representing Myanmar before the ICJ for the genocide case? Who do you think is representing Myanmar at the moment? The democratically elected government who ran into exile, or the military junta who grabbed power?
Military junta.
Yes, military junta is presenting Myanmar before the ICJ. ICJ didn't even articulate on this point, in the written proceedings. The president of the ICJ said in oral proceedings that it is states who are being tried before our court, not governments. So impliedly, it said whoever is in control of a state, that entity can represent that state before the court. And this is not about legitimacy. because only states can be tried before our court. So we don't mean that military junta is legitimate, but based on law, military junta should represent Myanmar. So based on all this, and I leave the answer to you. I just gave you the points based on which you can make your own mind. But based on this, you may think that, or you may consider the idea that maybe it is better for the Taliban to be regarded as the legal government of Afghanistan, even if not the legitimate, even if it is not a legitimate entity. But despite all I said, there is a strong, very strong counter-argument to all I said, and it is an argument based on jus cogens, the peremptory norms of international law. Norms of international law from which no derogation is permitted, like the prohibition of genocide or prohibition of torture, etc. And there are obligations for third states, when it comes to jus cogens violations. So third states, other states, are under an obligation not to aid or not to assist or not to recognize as lawful any consequence following from the violations of peremptory norms. So today Taliban is accused of violating peremptory norms, like by discriminating against women or through crimes against humanity, etc. It is accused of committing jus cogens violations. And third states are under obligation not to aid, assist, or recognize as lawful the consequences of violations of peremptory norms. So based on the obligation on third states, this obligation not to aid, assist, or recognize, some scholars argue that the Taliban cannot be recognized as a government, because recognizing the Taliban as the government of Afghanistan means aiding or assisting or recognizing as lawful those consequences. So that's a strong argument. There is this argument too. But one can also think that legal status, like legal status, like even being a state or being a government, status for anything doesn't depend on recognition. Because under the traditional doctrine of effective control, for example, legal status of an entity as government doesn't depend on recognition by individual states. It is automatic. Because if it depended on recognition, the United States of America could have militarily intervened in Venezuela based on the request of Guaido. It creates chaos. You can intervene in any state by recognizing some opposition figure as the legitimate president. So for that reason, under the conventional wisdom, under the conventional view in international law, status of being a government, the legal status doesn't depend on recognition by individual states. It is an automatic status, and for that reason we can say that this argument related to jus cogens violations doesn't apply here. You have to accept it as a government. Its status is a government. It doesn't change by recognition. Only the exceptional case of international recognition may change it, based on the cases I told you. But otherwise, it can't change. But still, based on these obligations on third states, right, not to aid, assist, or recognize as lawful the consequences of jus cogens violations, there are other tools third states can use. Instead of denying recognition, for example, they can deny more, like recognition is something abstract. They can deny, for example, certain privileges to the Taliban. They, based on this obligation on third states not to aid, assist, and recognize, they can apply sanctions against the Taliban. We have also something called countermeasures in international law. Have you ever heard of it? It is something states can resort to, countermeasures. It is something state can resort to when their rights are violated by other states. But for erga omnes violations, have you heard erga omnes violations, right? The obligations owed to all the community of states. For example, the rights of women or not to violate the rights of women is an obligation on states. And this is not only owed to the woman, it is owed to the whole international community. It's an erga omnes violation. If it is violated, any state can invoke it. Any state can say that my rights are violated. Because some obligations are so important, they are owed to all the international community. And if one of these violations are committed, erga omnes violations, like crimes against humanity, discrimination against women, any state, therefore, can invoke the responsibility of the party, of the state, violating these obligations. Any state can invoke it. Indonesia can invoke it. Indonesia can invoke the responsibility of Afghanistan if Afghanistan is committing crimes against humanity against its own citizens, because it affects all international community. So based on these violations, other states can apply countermeasures, or in the political language we say sanctions. They can deny some of the legal rights, not only privileges, okay, some of the concrete legal rights to the Taliban. So instead of denying recognition verbally, to me, what should states do to deny certain privileges because of the obligation of not to aid, assist, or recognize as lawful the consequences of use against violations, and apply countermeasures because of erga omnes violations. Because every state can apply countermeasures if their rights are violated. And the rights of women are erga omnes rights, or crimes against humanity violates erga omnes obligations. So any state can invoke the responsibility of Afghanistan or the Taliban if it is accepted as the government of Afghanistan. So this is all I wanted to say. Do you have questions?
Any questions?
Should we give a break because so many questions? If you have
and maybe also the student in the Zoom.
Okay, Should we give a break or take questions now?
I think our time is until 10:30, so it's limited time.
Okay, yes, take the questions now.
So without break, I think. Yes. So I would like to greet the
You
student.
can pick the student.
Yeah.
I won't interrupt.
Because from the schedule, our time is only 10:30. So we still have how many? 18. 18 minutes. 18 minutes. Okay, 18 minutes. So as usual, students here is very, very active. So maybe one student they have more than 2 or 3 questions. So as usual. But I would like to greet my student in Zoom. Does anyone have a question or would you like to respond to Professor Saifullah presentation, please? No? No raise hand, no response. Okay, if no response, no question from student in Zoom, so we back here in this class, because so many students raise hand, okay, we will open to the ask and question. Okay, Bubu first, and then I forget. Agama, then No, Parwana you always. Yeah, yeah, it's other friend, yeah. Masima, I think three questions first, yeah. One student, one question, okay? Yeah, please.
So, and please share my email address after the lecture with the students. So those who can't ask the question here can email me later.
Okay.
For any questions they have, you know, okay.
Please, Mas Abubu.
Okay.
Yeah, Bubu is from Niger.
Okay, mashallah.
My name is Bubu from Nigeria. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I actually wanted to ask two questions, but I guess I'll just pick one. Yeah. So about the international recognition, as you explained before, that in some situation it may replace the effective control.
Yes.
So my question is, when it comes to international recognition from the whole international community,
Yes.
is there like a stipulated amount of states that should recognize that before it becomes internationally recognized, or like it's okay if it's just one state that recognizes? Because there's some like examples where it's only one state that recognizes that country. So in that situation, does that still hold as international recognition, or there's like a minimum higher level of states that can recognize such countries before it is considered as internationally recognized?
Okay.
Thank you.
I can take all the questions and answer together. Yeah.
So how about paper three student? Yeah, I offer to the men here.
Yes. one or two,
Yeah,
yeah.
there's all the women. Yeah.
If they have
How about
questions.
if any question, maybe Mansur also from Afghanistan, and then so yeah, both of you is new student, yeah. Yeah. Okay, please. Is there any question from you? No?
No.
No
It's
question?
okay.
It's okay. Oh
Let's
yeah,
get back to
please.
your female.
Yeah.
Okay, I am Mahendra, but you can say my name with Ramazan. I'm from Indonesia. Maybe I will ask some question. Since 2021, Indonesia yet to recognize the Taliban government, Mr. Professor, because we see that our position is cautious, because we see in Afghanistan there is some human rights violation. So that's why we just we do some what we say erga omnes norms. So we just funding the aids, not legitimate the government. It's because we shielded from the what you say complicity in violation. And I will ask as academician, and you stay in Turkey. Turkey is one of OIC member.
Which organization?
OIC, Organization of Islamic Countries.
Yes.
I think OIC can press pressing the Afghanistan government via what we say can pressure the Afghanistan government now as a organization like it.
Yes.
It's because what I see and what you said before, the Taliban exercise some effective control.
Yes.
And also, if we do some political recognition, we justified by just cogents, I think. So, the question is simple: can we do some pragmatical way to avoid the absolutism about Afghanistan?
Okay. Can we have a nuanced approach?
Yeah.
To recognition?
Yeah, because my position is as an Indonesian state.
Yes.
Like it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mahendra. Okay, Pak Masima, and the last one agama.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah,
This is
from
Massimo.
CRT.
And my question is related to the answer you said about is this important? I mean, the recognition is important or no? And you pointed to two things. The first is who could represent, and the second is about immunity of state representatives. So if, as you mentioned, and I got from your lecture, that based on facts and what we have now, the Taliban is recognized country, I mean representative or government like that. So if we say something like this, what about the immunity of the Taliban representatives or leaders that they did many human rights violation, and during the civil war there was many cases of war crime and crimes against humanity. So what will happen regarding the case of immunity? Thank you.
Very good questions.
Okay, the last one.
Very hard questions.
Yeah, thank you so much. First of all, this is Aghamode Khanir, and thank you for giving me the chance. As you, Professor Hassar, mentioned, that Russia is the only country that recognizes Taliban government officially. So what are the legal and political consequences for the future of Afghanistan of the behavioral model adopted by other countries, such as China, Iran, and Central Asia states, which engage with Taliban indirectly, but they do not still grant formally recognition Taliban yet? Yeah, thank you.
So the question is,
what will be the consequences
of this type of relationship with the Taliban?
Yeah, with the Taliban,
okay.
yeah.
Another question?
I think time is limited. Yeah,
Okay.
I believe almost still many questions. Yeah.
As I said,
Okay.
you can email me always.
Yeah.
My email address is my name and surname together, Saifullah Hassar, nothing else, together, @gmail.com. Simple, okay? Very difficult questions indeed. Let's start with the first question. Yeah, she asked, how many states are needed for us to say that an entity is recognized internationally? This is a very difficult question, but if you studied international law, you have seen that so many questions are already unresolved in international law. One of them is, for example, how do we decide a rule of custom has emerged? How many states are needed for us to say that any rule of custom has emerged? So the answer to this question is same with the answer to this question. Okay, what we say is widespread practice. How wide, right? How widespread? So the one thing for sure is that we don't need recognition by every single state, because we don't need the same behavior from every single state for the emergence of a rule of custom. It can be widespread if, for example, if we speak from the perspective of custom, it can be widespread if that behavior is adopted by different political blocs of the world. Like, Russia, China are one of the poles in international politics, one of the different blocs than European countries, right? So long as, in terms of recognition, to me, if you ask me, so long as a government is recognized in a widespread manner, like from many countries in America, Africa, Asia, Europe, with no opposition by other countries, that is international recognition. And it isn't very difficult to identify international recognition in practice, because most of the time, recognition is granted, for example, by the United Nations Security Council, where all the continents, all the different political groups in the world is represented, or by the General Assembly with a very big majority vote. So so long as many different political views are represented in recognition, we can argue that international recognition has occurred. We don't need recognition by every single state, as we don't need the same behavior by every single state when it comes to custom. Our friend asked, Indonesia is finding it difficult to deal with Taliban because of the violations the Taliban commits, because other states are under an obligation not to aid, assist, in violation of his cogents, etc. Or other states has the right to respond with countermeasures to violations of erga omnes principles. Can we have a nuanced approach to recognition? We can. As I said, most of the time when I said Taliban should be regarded, the government of Afghanistan was based on state responsibility, right? So we can have a nuanced approach. And actually, we have this approach at the moment, kind of. For example, Taliban is not able to represent Afghanistan at the United Nations, right? The UN denies representative accredited by the Taliban. It is fine, but we can have a nuanced approach. We can deny the Taliban this right, but we can also sue the Taliban when it comes to state responsibility, because it is responsible. We can say that Taliban is responsible as the government of Afghanistan for the obligations of Afghanistan under international law. So because state is an abstract entity, what do we mean by Afghanistan? We mean an entity represented by the government, the Taliban, when it comes to state responsibility. So we can have this nuanced approach. We can accept it as government in some areas and deny the privileges of being a government in other areas. We can deny those privileges in the United Nations. But maybe it is a good thing to accept it when it comes to a case before the ICJ. Because many other states made also many statements saying that Taliban is under an obligation to observe the international obligations of the Afghan state. But only governments can be obliged to observe those obligations. So even they don't spell the word government, they recognize it impliedly as the government when it comes to state responsibility, when it comes to obligations of Afghanistan. So we can have such a nuanced approach. We can deny some privileges that governments have when it suits the international community, but accept it as government, for example, when it comes to state responsibility, so that it is an under obligation to observe the state of Afghanistan's international obligations. Because there is no other entity to observe those obligations in Afghanistan. Only the Taliban can protect the women's rights, right? It is them who is violating. And only them who can protect, only them who can stop those violations by, officials, by local officials or by the central officials working in the central government. Only the Taliban can stop this. So when it comes to, we can have such a nuanced approach, what I wanted to say. The immunity of Taliban members. Can we have a nuanced approach here to, can we deny immunity, right? Yes, but as I said, immunity is a very complicated subject itself. Normally, international law is strict in giving immunity to heads of state, heads of government, and ministers for foreign affairs. This trioka, we say, has immunity under any condition when they are in office. Once they left office, they can be prosecuted or investigated for some crimes. But when they are in office, there is no exception to immunity. But for other officials, other than this trioka, for any other official, they have also immunity. Any official, any act done on behalf of a state has immunity. But immunity is denied when it comes to use against violations. So you can't sue, you can't bring a case, you can't put on trial a head of state, a head of government, or the Minister for Foreign Affairs, but you can put on trial any other official before a court if the crime, if their acts has violated peremptory norms of international law, like crimes against humanity, if they amounted to a crime against humanity or a war crime, or some violations of human rights to like women's rights. Not all violations of human rights, but some violations of human rights too are violations of ISKCO against norms. So apart from these three people, you can put on trial any member of Taliban anyway for violation of ISKCO against. And according to some scholars, but this is not an accepted view, generally accepted view, heads of state, heads of government, and Minister for Foreign Affairs also should be able to put on trial. And some states do that. For example, Turkey initiated proceedings, opened investigation against Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel. Normally you can't do that. International law doesn't allow that. But we have some contrary practice. But at the end of the day, accepted view, generally accepted view is that they have immunity under any condition. Before national courts, before the International Criminal Court, anyone can be judged, anyone can be put on trial, even a head of state. You know, so, and what is important for the case of Afghanistan is the International Criminal Court, right? Because Afghan courts won't put Taliban officials on trial. But ICC, the International Criminal Court, because it is an international court, in international law there is such an exception when it comes to immunity, anybody can be put on trial before the ICC, even heads of state, even if it's a Taliban member, even head of government, even if it's a Taliban member. I hope that answer is enough for you. The last question from our friend here. How should we interpret the situation, right? Russia officially recognized, but many other states engage with it as if it is the government of Afghanistan, even though they deny recognition on paper or verbally. The thing is, we should not expect recognition at all. You know, there was even a policy of not recognizing governments. I mean, this is actually a widespread policy, diverged from sometimes. So usually, the general practice is not to issue a statement of recognition. Yes, this is violated when it comes to Libya, Venezuela, only in recent years. You know, the issue of recognition became popular only in recent years. When it comes to Libya, Venezuela, and Niger recently, not Nigeria, Niger, and the Gambia in Africa, again. Otherwise, the general practice is not to issue a statement of recognition anyway. So China doesn't have to issue a statement of recognition anyway. It can simply engage with the Taliban as if it is the government of Afghanistan. It is not under an obligation to issue recognition anyway. So we can say that, and there is something called implied recognition in international law. There is explicit recognition and implied recognition. We can say that some of those engagements, like concluding an international treaty on behalf of Afghanistan, something only a government can do, implies recognition. So we can interpret some of these engagements as recognition, as implied recognition. Thank you for attending this lecture. Thank you for your very good questions and very good comments. Thank you for everything. I'm very happy to have met you here.
To see you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Saifullah. Yeah, Mr. Saifullah has delivered his presentation. It's very interesting. I believe maybe you confused about this. Yeah, because remember, recognition is full of the political. Yeah, recognition is political act based on political consideration, not based on the legal consideration. So it's full of uncertainty. Many theory of the recognition, but none are consistency follow it. Yeah, it depend on the interest, yeah, of the party. But it's very interesting. It's many cases, many complexity issue. Yeah, that is delivered by Mr. Saifullah. Next, yeah, we will. I will invite, yeah, to Professor Mehmet, yeah, to deliver closing remarks, yeah, about that. Okay.
Dear friends,
the time is yours.
We have to come to end of this meaningful conference, and hosted by Islamic University of Indonesia and supported by the Faculty of Law of Dicle University. Yet during this period, we listened to extremely valuable presentation and international law, engaged in fruitful discussion, yes, and had the opportunity to enrich ourselves with different perspectives. Law, our common ground coming from different geographies, has once again shown us that the pursuit of justice is universal, and that this pursuit yields strong results when considered together. Such gathering also from this basic for the future academic and scientific collaborations. It has been a great source of satisfaction for us to participate in this valuable organization, coming all way from Diyarbakir, Turkey. Likewise, we believe that the friendship we have made and the bond we establish here will continue for many years to come. On this occasion, we would like to express our sincere gratitude to administrations of the Islamic University of Indonesia for their great hospitality, to all academic and administrative staff who contribute to the organization, and to all the participations. We hope that our conference will lead to lasting academic collaborations and new projects, and were great with the respect and affection. And I would like to thank to the Dean of the Faculty of Law in Indonesia, Professor Sefriani also, and all you in attendance against for inviting us here and giving me and Saifullah this opportunity to speak. Indonesian people, we think, are extremely kind, calm, helpful, respectful. On behalf of my friends, thank you very much for everything. Finally, we would like to thank you all in this one. We also were very pleased to hear your opinion, especially. We think you are very successful students. We were very happy to meet you. You can reach us via your email addresses also, Saifullah said. Thank you so much for your hospitality. We greet with you with respect. Terima kasih banyak.
Okay, I would like to express our sincere gratitude, yeah, to Professor Saifullah and Professor Mehmet, yeah, for this session. I also thanks to all participants, students here, yeah, that is you always active in the class, yeah. Also, the student in the Zoom. I hope this session has been beneficial and inspiring, yeah, for all of us. Last one, I sincerely apologize for any shortcoming or mistake, yeah, in when I is the moderator for this session. Okay, we reset hamdalah together. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay, now I invite all of you to take picture in the front, yeah, with Mr. Saifullah and Professor Mehmet. Okay.